Hey, what's going on? Welcome into another episode of the Better Fantasy Show. Really pumped to bring you an awesome episode today with my cousin John Macce. We're going to talk about the NFL quarterbacks in this upcoming 2023 draft class. But first, wanted to let you know about a really cool addition to the Better Fantasy store on the Better Fantasy app. We have now upper hand fantasy merch that you can purchase in the Better Fantasy store with your Better Coins. We have the 2023 rookie guide. We have the set your lineup mugs. We have a Sundays Are for Fantasy hoodie. And then we have these awesome t-shirts from our friends at Upper Hand Fantasy. Big props to them. Really excited to have them in the Better Fantasy store. So go check it out. Okay, so now without further ado, let's get to today's episode. All right, welcome into another episode of the Better Fantasy Football Show. I'm your host, Will Ty. Today, we are talking NFL draft, specifically the quarterback prospects. And joining us today, John Macce, my cousin John. What's going on, man?
Cuz, what's going on? Great to be here. We're taking our Christmas Eve chats from to the real world, huh?
I love it. Yeah, we got to do it. Well, I mean, look, you're one of the more knowledgeable football people that I know. You can talk ball with the best of them, and so really happy to have you on. But first, before we get into it, I wanted to quickly let everybody know about like a sweet contest that we're running at Better Fantasy for the draft. Super simple. It's called our Draft Superfecta. Really easy. Simply guess the first 4 picks in the NFL draft in correct order. And if you get them right, you'll have a chance to win $50 in Better Fantasy site credits. So all you have to do is comment below your first 4 picks for the NFL draft and your Better Fantasy username. So, John, who are you going with for your Superfecta? First 4 picks in order.
All right. I think I'm going to start. It's going to be pretty basic. We're going to go with Bryce Young, as most people probably will. I'll Bryce Young go to the Panthers. Then I have the Texans doing Texans kind of things. They're not going to take their future quarterback for whatever reason. I think they're going to pick Will Anderson from Alabama, who's the edge rusher, who is a great college player, but the Texans have not had a good quarterback since Deshaun Watson. They should draft one, but I don't think they will. My third one is, I think, will be a trade. I think the Cardinals will trade their pick to, I guess I don't have to tell. I don't really have to know. I'm going to guess the Raiders trade for C.J. Stroud, so Stroud will go third. And then fourth, I'll have the Colts taking Will Levis. I think that's how it will shake out.
All right, so we've got Young, Anderson, who was
Stroud,
Stroud, and then Levis. Okay, I love it. So 3 quarterbacks in your top 4. Everybody who's listening, you can copy John if you want. That would probably be a smart decision. Go ahead and comment your picks in the chat below. Comment your Better Fantasy username. If you get them right, you're gonna have a chance to win $50 in Better Fantasy site credit. All right, so John, let's get into it. Quarterback breakdowns. I think it makes the most sense to start a pointless countdown here. We'll start with what's kind of being assumed as the 5th best prospect, Hooker. Are you cool with starting with him? Give me your take.
Hendon Hooker.
Yep. So give me your take on Hooker, both as like a prospect and then kind of how you're thinking about it for Dynasty.
Sure. So Hendon Hooker, if the college football season was 10 weeks long, would have won the Heisman Trophy last year. Tennessee offense threw for a bunch of yards. They play a wide open system. A lot of people are saying it doesn't correlate to the NFL. They play with wide splits. There's always receivers running wide open down the sidelines, but very good assist-to-turnover ratio. I believe he threw in the mid-30s touchdowns, under 5 picks both years. He played at Tennessee. Has a good arm. Draft-wise, he's very old. He's 25 years old, which is not something that teams are looking for these days, so that's why he's not being talked about as a top 3-4 pick. Tore his ACL going into, I think it was his second to last game of last year. So, again, that's why I said if it was 10 weeks long, he would have won the Heisman. So that also throws a wrench into things. But I do think this guy's going to go in the first round. Teams just look at that 5th year because with a first-round pick, you get the 5th-year option. I would look for a team that has an older quarterback or a team that has a situation they like where they don't have to play Hooker right away based more on that injury. But he's very knowledgeable. He's cerebral. He's older. I think he will be a first-round pick just because teams can get the 5th year on him.
Gotcha. So you could see a team like Minnesota potentially trading back into the first round to take him with that 32nd
Minnesota, I
overall
think
pick.
Seattle has a second first round pick in like I think the low 20s.
Mm-hmm.
So like
I think
if
it is
they like
20.
at five,
Yep.
yeah, at five, say they take I don't know Jalen Carter or Wilson, the defensive end out of Texas Tech. Maybe they take their guy. They just signed Geno, but that contract's only really a year long. Maybe they take Hendon Hooker there. And then for Dynasty, I think you would if he gets. I think you should play it the same way he's getting drafted. If you're in a super flex league, again, he's going to have more value because he's a quarterback. But if you have a top 5 pick and you need a quarterback, he's not the guy you're taking. If you're a team that has, like, say, you have an Aaron Rodgers on your roster, or you have even a Kirk Cousins, or an older quarterback who might be on his way out of the league, or his value is diminishing, maybe at the end of the first round, early second, you pick up Hendon Hooker.
Gotcha. Who would you rather have in a super flex dynasty league if you're in your rookie draft and you're sort of in that situation where you really need a quarterback? Are you going to take Jackson Smith and Jigba, or are you going to take Hendon Hooker?
If it's a super flex league, and
you need quarterback.
Jackson Smith and Jigba.
Okay.
I think Jackson Smith and Jigba could be a Pro Bowl player right now.
Yep, totally. Very excited to see where he goes.
I am too.
Here's an off-topic question. I asked this to my buddy Cam earlier today. Say not considering Superflex or anything like that, but say you're in a dynasty rookie draft, and Thursday comes tomorrow, and Kansas City takes Jackson Smith and Jigba, and Bijan goes to the worst team you can imagine, whoever it ends up being. Are you taking Jackson Smith and Jigba over Bijan in dynasty at that point, or are you still pulling the trigger on Bijan?
I think, again, it's team dependent what your team is. I think if you looked at most of the experts' ranks of what they would do, people would put Smith and Jigba first just because he's on the Chiefs.
Yep.
But Bijan, I think people are talking about Bijan like people talked about Saquon Barkley, and no one's talked about running backs since then. If you're going just based on the film and the talent and the position scarcity, it's Bijan no matter what. But Smith and Jigba's going to be in a better situation because I don't think he's going to go as high as Bijan is. So you're going to go to a better team later in the draft. Obviously, that's how it works. But I think it would be a pretty even split, honestly. I think some people would say he's playing with Patrick Mahomes. It's easy. Just take the receiver. But Bijan might be generational.
Yep, definitely. Well, only time will tell, and thankfully we don't have too much longer to wait. Okay, so number 4 in terms of quarterback prospects, and this is just me picking names fairly much out of a hat. I don't know much about the college football game. I don't know much about the prospects. That's why I bring experts like you on, John. So let's go with number 4. I know you said he's going to be going 4th in your draft. So Will Levis, give me your take on Will Levis as a prospect. I know he's sort of like a polarizing figure. So what's your take on him as a prospect? And then depending on his landing spot, people assume he's going to go to Indianapolis at 4. What are sort of his prospects for dynasty as well?
Yeah, if I had to rank this and I was putting together a list of players for a team, he would be my 5th quarterback. I do not think that I don't get it. Everyone who loves him is going to tell you Josh Allen. But for Josh Allen, I can give you Jake Locker, E.J. Manuel, Jamarcus Russell, Vince Young, Zach Wilson.
So what don't you like about Levis?
Too many mistakes. He makes too many mistakes. He turns the ball over. He doesn't have. He has one speed. He can throw. I mean, in his pro day, he threw the ball. He hit the ceiling. I mean, great. You could throw the ball a mile. These guys all can throw it a mile. If Bryce Young wanted to wind up and throw the ball as hard and far as he can, he could throw it very hard and very far. It doesn't translate to the game very well. At least I don't think it does. They played a game last year against Ole Miss where they're down by like a score, 3 minutes left. They're inside the 20-yard line, fumbles. All right, one fumble, like whatever, that happens. The way the timeouts work out, they get the ball back. Same thing. Same situation. He's running. He knows he's going to get hit. He should go down. Fumbles again. It's awareness. It's football. It's just football sense that I don't think I'd want to spend that kind of pick on a guy like that, where we're just saying he could be this, he could be great, but we haven't seen him be great, even in college. And they're supposed to be great in college and then not work out in the pros. He wasn't even great in college. How is he going to be great in the pros?
Yeah, I've seen the Will Levis breakdown. Pretty much in line with what you just kind of laid out there, John. Matt Waldman, who's probably the voice that I trust the most when it comes to projecting rookies, I think he has Will Levis outside of his top 10. He might even have him at 13, which just seems kind of like.
I think that's more of a FU to the rest of the draft community, that he just hates this guy.
Right, exactly. But it makes sense. I mean, the way you laid it out, it's like, look, if some people just aren't good at football. Like, like Will Levis probably has been reliant on his athleticism for his entire career, like through middle school and high school and even college. And so he's been able to get by as being not a good football player, like, if that makes sense. Like, you just have to understand that. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no. One more quick on Levis. Levis started his career at Penn State came in as a quarterback. He came in I think a year after a guy named Sean Clifford. Sean Clifford just played what seemed like his 8th year at Penn State with all the COVID years and stuff. He played for like 5 years. Mm-hmm. And there's a reason Sean Clifford played 5 years at Penn State, because he wasn't good enough to go play in the pros. When one was a freshman and one was a sophomore, Will Levis couldn't beat out Sean Clifford. And now we're talking, and Sean Clifford is going to be probably maybe a 7th rounder to undrafted, and now Will Levis is a top 4 pick. They brought him in to play like Taysom Hill snaps at Penn State. He would come in, he'd run QB power, and then he'd get out.
Yep.
I just don't see, I don't know, is the ton, like the analytics are going to say that his like velocity is great, but at a certain point you just have to watch the games. And you could just watch a guy playing, just like, this guy doesn't, whatever it is, he doesn't have it.
Definitely. So let's try and put a number on it then, John. Like, if you're in your rookie draft, super flex, and Will Levis does go to Indianapolis, are you taking him like ahead of Hooker? Or are you taking him after Hooker? Where does he land for you?
You'd have to probably take him ahead of Hooker, because I think he's going to get drafted high enough where he's going to play. Mm-hmm. Like, if it works out, like I said, he's going to go to Indianapolis. He's going to play. Like, they don't have anyone. They're not going to – Matt Ryan, I think, is cut or retired or whatever. What are they going to do, Nick Foles again? Sam Ellinger? Like, he's going to play. The one thing in fantasy that he can do is he will run. So even if he's not that good of a real-life player, I mean, if he falls in the end zone, there's 6 points he steals you right there. He will run. Obviously, every quarterback's going to throw for at least 150 to 200 yards a game. So he's going to have to go ahead of Hooker, but he won't be on any of my teams.
Gotcha. So redraft for this year for fantasy. Is he somebody that you're – I'm just trying to compartmentalize this for the audience. So Will Levis is not somebody that you're even thinking about in redraft. Like, if you're streaming quarterback and he's there in the 17th round, you're not even bothering with it. Okay.
No.
Cool.
No, not at all. No, not this year. You'd have to prove me wrong a lot. This is a little off to the side note. Redraft, I am almost reversing strategy with quarterbacks. I think there are less great quarterbacks than there used to be. So the cool hip thing used to be, hey, I'm going to wait on quarterback. I think now I'm going on in my leagues this year is to go get quarterback. I'm tired of trying to piece together some guy who can run, and then, like, maybe it'll work out, and then it never does. And meanwhile, I'm just looking up at every final in my league, and the teams in the final all have Joe Burrow, Josh Allen, or Patrick Mahomes.
Dude, I was saying that the other day. I was like, look, you could have nailed your first 4 rounds in your draft, like, absolutely nailed them. And then you street, like, in the whatever, like 10th, 11th round, you're like, okay, like, time to get quarterback. Let me go get Matt Stafford and Baker Mayfield. How'd that work out for you? Like, yeah. You're getting 40 points hung on you by Jalen Hurts or Justin Fields. Like, there's just no way you can compete. I
thought I fleeced 2 of my redraft leagues this year. I got Rodgers in like the 9th round.
Yep.
It was a slog to get to 15, 20 points.
Yep.
And
Absolutely.
thankfully, it was like a keeper league where I had two good keepers that worked out. So the team was skewed a little bit where I had Rodgers and was able to make up for it a little bit. But when you're playing against Mahomes and Burrow and Allen, like in the playoffs, like you're screwed. And Hurts was the other one I left out. And you look up and their quarterbacks putting up 30-something points every week.
Yep. It's a different ball game. Really quick, because we do have to get back on topic, but I want to do the Rodgers thing really quick. Give me one word to describe sort of your sentiment around Aaron Rodgers and the Jets offense heading into the 2023 season for fantasy purposes.
Buy it. They're going to be really good.
Okay.
Buy it.
Buy it being with a hyphen, so you still get one word there. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Take Garrett Wilson, take Breece Hall. Lazard's not bad. I wouldn't be shocked if they get another guy now that they know he's there. In the next couple of days, they will pick another skill player who will be a very trendy rookie pick. Is my guess.
Awesome. I love it. Okay, so going back to the rookies, looking at the 2023 NFL draft prospects, coming in at number 3, a guy that's sort of sliding down a lot of mock drafts, which I think is kind of interesting. John, I'll just let you know, this is my QB1. I have fallen in love with Anthony Richardson, so I'd love to hear your opinion on him as a prospect and then for fantasy as well.
So as someone who watches a lot of college football, not from a scouting perspective, but more as a fan and betting perspective, I've watched a lot of Anthony Richardson. I watch all these guys, really, just because they're all on high profile programs.
Mm-hmm.
So I watched him play a lot last year. He is maybe the most confusing player I've ever watched. I watched him play against Utah. I'm sure you've heard about that game that he played, where he looked like the best football player ever. I don't think he threw for a touchdown, but he made like 3 or 4 plays where he'd run around all over the field, fling the ball across his body, like right on a dime to someone. And they beat Utah, who was going into the year a top 10 team and was top 10 pretty much for the whole year. The next week they go play Kentucky, who ironically Will Levis's team, who underachieved this year. That was another ranked team, and Anthony Richardson looked like a deer in headlights, like Sam Darnold seeing go, like throwing interceptions to defenders who like me or you could have saw him. I don't know how he missed them. Like he's another guy who's again, you're betting on projection.
Mm-hmm.
You're betting on really crazy upside skill, but this is a guy who's only started 15 games in his college career. A guy who was similar to that got a lot of draft buzz was Mitch Trubisky. Only played 1 year at North Carolina, got drafted second, and hasn't really worked out for our guy Mitch in the NFL. But I do like him better than Levis. Because I think Levis has played a lot more football, so there's a lot more examples of it not being as good. If you're going to take Richardson, he has to get the Aaron Rodgers, Brett Favre treatment. Like, no field for 2 years, at least.
No field for 2 years.
He's got to watch. He's got to watch and learn how to play quarterback. Because right now he was playing backyard football. And that's why they went 6 and 7 and were up and down, because there was no real approach to it. They kind of just said, hey, Anthony, go play.
Yeah.
And it looked really cool, but it also looked really bad at times.
Yeah. I hear the comps, Lamar Jackson's rushing ability and Josh Allen's arm, and I'm like, whoa. So I totally get what you're saying about like, hey, this is a bet and it could pay off in a big way, but just recognize that it's still a bet. So I think that's a smart way for people to rationalize it, like from a fantasy perspective. And a lot's going to depend on where he gets drafted and sort of the draft capital and how like if he has to start day one, so on and so forth. So like when it comes to fantasy, John, how are you thinking about him in terms of dynasty? Because if he's not going to be the starter year one, obviously for redraft, we're not worried about him. But for dynasty,
yeah,
like it's the upside question, right? So like Young and Stroud, who we're going to talk about in a minute, kind of safer guys, not the same ceiling as Richardson. Richardson lower floor, higher ceiling. So how do you sort of compartmentalize him in like the dynasty context?
I would think it's again situation dependent. I kind of said that a lot, but if he goes to a team with like good infrastructure and a good coach that we like, another team, we've said them already, but Seattle, like if they decide that he's the guy and they pick him fifth, Pete Carroll's kind of a goof, but they win football games every year, kind of. They kind of always figure it out. So if he does because the Geno thing's in place for a little bit, he can kind of sit there and figure it out. That's a great team. If he goes to the Colts, if the Colts decide he's their guy at 4, I want no part of him because I think the Colts are kind of a train wreck. Mm-hmm. That organization isn't run as well, I don't think. But I think it's almost better. Yes, you want him to play right away if you draft him because you want the points now. But if he goes to a good team and is kind of there, hey, in 2 years, this is our guy, I'd almost be more excited to draft him for that. As just like, hey, I know in 2 years I'm going to have this guy who could just be an absolute weapon. And, yeah, he has Josh Allen's arm. The Lamar running stuff I wouldn't get as crazy about. He's really fast. I just think Lamar runs like a running back. And I don't think anybody who plays quarterback ever is going to run like that again. Like the other best running quarterback in the league is Fields, and I like Fields, but Fields is just straight line fast. Richardson is very straight line fast. I don't think any quarterback could run like Lamar. And I'm not a huge Lamar fan, but in terms of just straight running ability, I don't think there's any quarterback who can do what he does.
Yeah, that's why I got so excited because when I hear, I haven't watched Anthony Richardson play a single snap of football. Like obviously I've watched film, but like not like in sort of the heat of the moment in the heat of last season. So I don't really understand like how people are talking about him that well. But when I hear Lamar Jackson, yeah, that is a really big deal because sure he has the top speed, but Lamar, I mean, just close your eyes and picture Lamar Jackson running in your head. He's juking guys out. He's making people miss. He's a magician out there. So temper the expectations a little bit on the rushing. I like that. So for Dynasty Superflex, where are you taking him? Just assuming that he goes somewhere and he sits for a year. Like say he goes, who's a good team that has, say he goes to the Vikings, right? Like the Vikings are like, okay, we got one more year of Kirk Cousins. We're going to let Richardson sit. What's sort of your take on him for Dynasty at that point?
So when I was saying about which situations I'd want to, like that's a situation I would want Anthony Richardson in. If he goes to a team like with the Vikings with good receivers, good infrastructure, offensive coach, quarterback coach, Kevin O'Connell, quarterback coach, I would take him really high. I'd take him probably top, if it's a 12-teamer, if I have a top 6 pick, he's probably not getting out of that in most leagues that I would think I would be in or anything like that. Because just the upside is off the charts. But if I'm staying away if he's going to a team and it's announced that he's the starter. I just don't think he's ready for that.
Yep. Gotcha. Okay, cool. So anything else on Richardson before we move on?
No. I think he's really, really just a
dart throw.
He's just such a fascinating player.
Yeah, he
really is. I think I don't want to root for anyone to be a bust, but I think Levis is a bust. Mm-hmm. Richardson. I mean, he could be 2015 MVP Cam Newton, or he could be Jamarcus Russell. I have no idea. He could be either one.
Yeah, and so much, like you've been saying, so much of it is going to depend on landing spot. If he gets stuck with some bad coaches, obviously that stinks for him, and it stinks for all of his supporters and the Anthony Richardson truthers like myself. Okay, so moving on, C.J. Stroud, sort of the consensus number 2 NFL quarterback in this class, I think. Maybe the Colts don't see it that way, but C.J. Stroud, should he be falling on draft boards? Because I know he's sort of been falling a little bit.
No, he shouldn't. This is classic overthink of – part of it is the Texans. I mean, the Texans are just dumb. They're so dumb. Like last year, they wanted a corner, right?
Yeah.
Gardner is the prototype. When you ask any NFL person, what does cornerback need to be? Extremely long, fast, and tall. Sauce Gardner can hang his arms down and almost tie his shoes without even bending down. He's the perfect corner. And they take Derek Stingley, who's a good player, who's going to be a good pro, was at LSU, national champion, great player. But Sauce was the pick, and they just didn't do it. So I think the Texans are going to screw it up, and they're going to pick someone else. C.J. Stroud should be the slam dunk number 2 pick. He's the most accurate quarterback in the class. He is a prototypical build. He's like 6'3", 6'4", like 220. Doesn't have the crazy athleticism that Levis or Richardson do, but pinpoint accuracy. If you want, if people out there want to watch examples of that, go back and watch the Rose Bowl against Utah 2 years ago. So this was 2022, or the Rose Bowl from that year.
Yeah.
Just sticking throws all over the field, deep, short, extremely on time. There's two knocks on him. One is fair. He doesn't run as much as the other quarterbacks do, and he could be a little more mobile. But I tell you to go watch the Georgia playoff game where he almost ran them to a national championship, ran for over 100 yards, first time he did that in his career. And for the first probably 25 games of his college career, he didn't run, but he showed he could, which is a little weird because if you can, I don't know why you didn't for 20-something games. And the other criticism of him is Ohio State. Where are the pros everywhere else except quarterback? Now, to be fair to them, the only real first-round quarterback they've had was Justin Fields, and the book is still out on him. But, I mean, when you look at the receivers he threw to, Garrett Wilson, Chris Olave, Jackson Smith and Jigba, Marvin Harrison Jr. is going to be a top 5 pick next year.
Pretty solid.
What?
Pretty solid.
Yeah, pretty solid. They have another receiver who's going to be a first-round pick. And they just have 5-star receivers over and over and over again. But my answer to that is, yes, they're open, but there's also examples where they're NFL open that's not like complete, and he's still sticking the throws within those little windows. He's extremely accurate. They're bringing up this. They have a new test now, like the S2 test.
Yeah, what's the deal with this? What's the deal with this thing?
I don't know. I always thought it was the Wonderlic test, but apparently this is a new one that you can't even take. Apparently you need a special laptop, and I'm not joking, or a special Xbox. Those are the only two ways you can take the test. So if there's a test that you need a special Xbox to take, I'm not really going to value it. He did score very low. I think he scored like 18%, which is extremely low. But I don't really know. That doesn't really mean anything.
I've scored a couple 18% in my life, and I turned out wicked. So I'm not worried about it.
for every, it's the other thing. For every guy who did well on the test and was a bad pro, there's a guy who did poorly on the test and was a good pro. I don't really think they're – the highest Wonderlic score ever is Ryan Fitzpatrick. And Ryan Fitzpatrick, nice guy, played for a while, but was he a great player? No. Mm-hmm. So that's my thing on Stroud. I think he's just slam dunk, number two player in the draft, number 2 quarterback. I think the Texans should take him. What are they? I don't know what they're trying to do. The only thing I can think of is, are they going to just be horrible again and try to take their run at next year's quarterbacks that are supposed to be good?
Yeah, that will definitely be interesting. So, okay, CJ Stroud or Anthony Richardson for like Dynasty, who are you going with again?
Stroud.
Okay, so even with all the upside of Richardson and sort of the limited ceiling of Stroud, you just think he's going to be solid. Like he's going to be somebody who has a 10-year career, is just going to be a really solid plug-and-play guy that if you can take him at the 102 or the 103 or the 104 in your rookie drafts in Superflex, just take it to the bank. Don't forget about it, lock it in, walk away happy in 10 years because he had a great quarterback.
I think C.J. Stroud's worst-case career is Jared Goff.
Hey, John, so C.J. Stroud versus Anthony Richardson, if you could go ahead and take one of those guys for your Superflex team in Dynasty, who are you going with?
I'm going with C.J. Stroud. This is for also me being, I like to play things a little safer, especially when I draft my Dynasty teams. I think too much in Dynasty is put on, hey, in 3 years, I might be the best team in the league, but I'm going to stink for 2 years. Winning now is also fun. And I think Stroud's going to go to a team and he's going to play. And I think worst case scenario, he's Jared Goff. I think that his worst career output is Jared Goff, where he's like in fantasy QB 13, 14. I think that's the worst he can be. And then ceiling, who knows? I mean, It depends. It depends what goes on around him. Joe Burrow is not a guy. I'm not saying he's Joe Burrow. Don't aggregate it, but Joe Burrow is not a guy with amazing physical gifts. He's very accurate. He knows when to get rid of the ball, and he happens to have Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd, and Joe Mixon.
Mm-hmm.
So if Stroud ends up on a team like I think in our little Superfecta, I said that the Raiders would trade up for him. Well, you can start your career throwing to Devontae Adams. That's a good start.
Yeah,
I think he could be very good.
And the thing too,
I think Stroud is very safe.
Yeah, the thing too with fantasy, and I'm not like kind of breaking any news here, but you just got to get into the playoffs, And so if CJ Stroud's going to be a guy that you can rely on to give you production at the quarterback position, obviously that's good for the quarterback position. But then what that allows you to do is take some swings at running back and wide receiver because you don't have to worry about it. If you take Anthony Richardson and he rides the pine for 2 years, you're still going to be taking quarterbacks probably because you're not going to be able to bank on Richardson. But if you can bank on CJ Stroud as being like, a top 15 like fantasy quarterback that can get you to the playoffs, and then as we all know, like once you get into the fantasy playoffs, anything can happen. I think that's a good play. I would personally take Richardson just based on the upside. That's just the way I play fantasy. But I think Stroud is a super safe pick too. So okay, last guy, Sean. When it comes to the quarterbacks here for the 2023 NFL draft class, Bryce Young seems like the number one overall consensus pick, sort of take it to the bank right now. Do you agree with that? Should he be the number one overall pick? And how do you feel about him?
I do. He was by far the best player in college last year. He won the Heisman 2 years ago. The only reason they didn't give it to him is because he wasn't better than he was the year before, and they didn't make the playoff. And the games that they lost by 3, and they lost on a 2-point conversion. So he was still a great player. For the first time in a while, Alabama doesn't have that top-tier receiver coming out. So if you're like, no Jamison Williams, no Jerry Jeudy, none of those guys are coming out this year. So he was actually playing with not as stacked of a team as you think he was just because he played at Alabama. The offensive receivers were not as good as they have been in the past. It can make anything happen. Obviously, the biggest concern is his size. He's short. He's 5'10". More importantly, what I would be more scared of, I think he weighed in at 200 pounds. He doesn't weigh 200 pounds. He probably just ate a bunch of spaghetti before the weigh-in. I'm more worried about him getting landed on more than I am him about his height and seeing over the defense. We've seen short quarterbacks work. We've seen tall quarterbacks fail. So you don't have to be a certain height to play the position. He is super instinctive. One of the things he's great at that I think Aaron Rodgers is great at, Peyton Manning was great at it, Tom Brady was great at it, but this guy's a better physical athlete than those guys were. You never see those guys take a big hit. What can you remember Aaron Rodgers ever getting popped or Tom Brady ever getting really that was a huge hit on him? He'd get sacked because, he just wasn't that. But he always got rid of the ball. They kind of dipped their shoulder in a weird way. And if they go, people made fun of Peyton and Eli at the end for kind of just going down. But Bryce Young's not going to do that. But he never really takes that big hit because he's so instinctive. A lot of college people have kind of likened him to Steph Curry. He kind of has those little, those choppy, think about Steph Curry coming off screens. If it's not open, he kind of takes that choppy little step to the left or the right, gets the ball, puts the shot up, and it's good. And you're like, oh, how the hell did he make that? But he did. And the same thing with Bryce Young is you think you got him sacked, then he's just a step from the sideline, and he just flicks it, and it's like, oh, that's a first down. He just makes those winning plays that you can't teach. And I think you can teach things to get over the size and strength issues, but you just can't teach what's up here.
Yeah. He seems like a baller. He seems like the opposite of Will Levis. Is that a good way to think about it?
Yeah, exactly. He's exactly the opposite of Will Levis.
I love it. Okay, so before we kind of wrap up here, John, I wanted to ask your opinions just on the draft as a whole. It's draft day eve. Super exciting for us football fans. Super exciting for us fantasy players. Can you just kind of give me some nuggets here before we head out? Give the people some info that they can keep in the back of their mind as they prep for their dynasty rookie drafts and everything else.
Yeah, so if just quick rundown, I'll give you like a guy for each position. If you have the 1-1 in a super flex, take Bryce Young and just forget
Over
it.
Bijan.
Bryce Young, I would take Bryce. If it's a super flex, I'd take Bryce Young over Bijan. Just because when you got to play two quarterbacks, they're just as valuable.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Bryce Young is going to be just. Bijan Robinson could have 7 great years of production, and that'd be a great NFL career. Bryce Young can have 15.
Mm-hmm.
Like you could just pick him, and he's there. He's on your team. If you're a 19-year-old playing, you could be in your 30s and still be starting Bryce Young.
Yep.
If you're 19, by the time you're probably on your second job, you have to get rid of Bijan Robinson already.
Yep.
That's my thought for Dynasty. Obviously, Bijan is the number 1 running back that I would take. Also, Jahmyr Gibbs from Alabama.
Mm-hmm.
He's going to go in the first round. This is bringing back some nightmares for Dynasty players. Jahmyr Gibbs, the Chiefs love him, I think. We all remember the last first-round pick they used the year after they won the Super Bowl was Clyde Edwards-Helaire. People picked him first. We know how that went. But I think he's a really, really solid player. He was Alabama's leading receiver last year. I think he had the most receptions. I don't know about yards, but he had a lot of catches. So he does a little bit of everything. At receiver, we talked about him a little bit. Jackson Smith and Jigba, I think, is far and away the best receiver in the class. Unlike quarterback, Ohio State has a pretty good track record with receivers.
Yeah.
You look at last draft, look at Terry McLaurin. They put out guys every year who produce. He should be no different. The knock on him is that he's going to play in the slot. He played a lot of slot in college. Well, when Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave are on the other sides of you, you're going to be kicked inside.
Mm-hmm.
There's a guy named Justin Jefferson who had to play in the slot because there was a guy named Jamar Chase playing next to him. Both those guys worked out okay. I think that is a stupid concern to have. I think Smith and Jigba is the best receiver in the class. Tight end, I think you talked about him on one of your recent pods. For fantasy purposes, not real life purposes, I love Dalton Kincaid from Utah. I think the Notre Dame tight end Michael Mayer might go ahead of him, but for Kincaid is basically a receiver playing tight end. So if your league uses tight ends, I know some are starting to just put all the pass catchers together. He really is. It's kind of cheating because he's not a tight end. He's not going to block anybody. He's going to run all the routes that the receivers run. So those are kind of like the main guys who are going to go in the first round that if you have those positional needs and a good position for a pick, those are my favorite player at each position. And then a couple late guys who are going to go on day 2 or 3. There's a running back from Texas A&M, Devon Achane. Mm-hmm. This guy is a burner. I think he was also on their track team. His 40 was in the low 4.3s. Can just fly. He ran for a lot of yards last year. Very small, very kind of going to be a gadgety NFL player, but can catch the ball as well. So he might even be a receiver, running back hybrid kind of thing. I would snag him later in your dynasty drafts. Another tight end is Sam Laporta from Iowa. He's going to go probably second round of the NFL draft. You'll probably be able to get him later in your dynasty rookie drafts. Iowa offense, not what they're known for, but he was the only thing that worked. Obviously, at Iowa, they run the ball a lot, so he can block and he can catch. So he's going to be on the field for an NFL team. I can see him being a guy who it's 3rd and goal from the 1. They run the play action. Everybody bunches up in the middle, and he throws a floating pass right to some guy you never heard of, and it's Sam Laporta. I think he's going to catch a bunch of touchdowns. I think 2nd, 3rd, 4th round of your dynasty leagues, look for him. And then one more is a receiver named Cedric Tillman, who played at Tennessee. Last year, so the year before last year, he was their number 1 receiver. Had over 1,000 yards, had a great year, but then got hurt in their bowl game, and if not their bowl game at the end of the year. Did not play a lot in 2022-23, and his teammate Jalen Hyatt won the Biletnikoff Award for the best receiver, and he put up a bunch of yards and crazy numbers. But Cedric Tillman was looked at as the better player heading into this season. He's going to get drafted lower. He's more of a possession guy, so not as fast, not the measurables. Going to go later in the draft because of that, but very steady, not a lot of drops, very physical player. Can go up and get 50-50 balls. Take a shot at him. I like him a lot.
Love it. Well, hey, John, really appreciate you coming on, man. This has been a blast. Definitely going to have you on again soon. I don't know if you can hear, but we've got the neighbors next door cutting their lawn, so I think it's time for us to wrap. Yeah, they're going at it. I mean, look, grass is growing. Somebody's got to cut it. So, hey, appreciate you coming on, John. Appreciate y'all for listening today. Don't forget to input in the comments your first 4 picks of the NFL draft along with your Better Fantasy username, and we're going to go ahead and gift somebody with $50 in site credit if you get it right. So go ahead and do that now. John, really appreciate you coming on, man, and we'll talk soon. This has been the Better Fantasy Football Show, and we'll see you next time. Thanks.